Sagittarius Damas and Scorpio Vrishchik are right next to each other, and the border between them is the Gandant I described in previous videos. In some ways, these two signs are opposites because they are 12 signs away from each other. And because one is behind the other, they have a life-death or birth-death configuration. The same principle is used in the houses, gain and loss. The house just behind a house represents the loss of the qualities of that house, the death of that. And Saturn Dasha, which just moved from Scorpio to Sagittarius, from death to rebirth, rules two signs side by side. This is the only planet that does this. Like Sagittarius and Scorpio, this gives Saturn a birth-death configuration as well. So whatever Saturn rules in one house, it rules the loss of that quality in the previous house it owns. For Sagittarius ascendants, Saturn rules the third house of dynamism and independence, especially independence, and the second house of loss of independence. And it loses that independence through commitment to someone, because that's a quality of the second house. So both signs are good, but different. And here, that dichotomous planet is actually transiting the first and most important house of Sagittarius, the first house of rebirth for Sagittarius. So here are some of those contradictory qualities of Sagittarius and Scorpio. If Sagittarius is joyously and outgoingly seeking enlightenment, that's its innate quality, Scorpio is seeking an inner mystery. Sagittarius is fire, Scorpio is water, and these two don't mix. Sagittarius is a mutable, changeable sign. Scorpio is a fixed sign. Sagittarius wants freedom. Scorpio wants control. Saturn is a cold planet, now in a fiery sign, Sagittarius. Just as cold lowers molecular activity, lowers entropy or disorder, it slows down the active and fiery Sagittarius. And fire is nothing but entropy. Saturn is, or was, in the water sign of Scorpio for 2.5 years, freezing that water and hiding Scorpio's true nature. Now that Saturn has left Scorpio, the true nature of Scorpio is once again revealed, which, as you would suspect, brings an awakening for Sagittarius. And that's all about the past 2.5 years especially. This is the reason for the transformation of the Gandant, where Saturn crosses this cusp between these two signs, these two opposite extremes, especially fire and water. The heat of the fiery sign can vaporize the water. The water can put out the fire of Sagittarius. And this awakening takes place when Saturn enters Sagittarius, of the contrast between the two signs. It's a great change. Because of these great differences in the two signs, especially the fire and water, there must be a transformation of any planet that goes through that point. It's kind of like if you jumped out of a frozen lake and suddenly jumped into a roaring bonfire. You will be transformed, and that transformation might be painful. Saturn will soon go retrograde, Vakriya, and re-enter Scorpio and stay there for 4 months and a week. Those dates are June 20 and October 26 of 2017. Saturn will also have to pass twice over the powerful Gandant, the transformation cusp, and get there and back. So what will Saturn do in Scorpio during that time when it returns to Scorpio? Pretty much more of what it did in the past 2.5 years. So just when you thought it was all over, well, it's not. Saturn is a Karaka for the 12th house of loss, meaning it has similar qualities to the 12th house. So it's the loss of loss. It's gain. And Scorpio is the 12th house for Sagittarius ascendants. So once again, symbolically for Sagittarius ascendants, it will be the recluse meditating in a cave, 12th house qualities. And sign-wise, Saturn will be hiding the real nature of Scorpio, so that you won't really know much about what it's doing. It will be a mystery. Saturn is also enemies with Mars, the ruler of Scorpio. So it's uncomfortable there in some ways. But Saturn is a planet of endings and loss in the house of endings and loss, and that makes it comfortable there. So it's both comfort and loss of comfort, because it's gain, because of its gain and loss quality, ruling two signs next to each other. It's the only planet that has this dichotomy. And here it is, for Sagittarius ascendants anyway, moving from houses of loss to gain and from birth to death. So we're seeing a transformation from many angles here, both sign-wise, house-wise, and planet-wise. Saturn's a cold planet. Scorpio is water. So Saturn returning here freezes Scorpio again to hide his true nature once again. So Saturn can also create deception here. Scorpio is fixed and watery. Its symbol is a scorpion's tail, which is a stinging insertion or intrusion. A scorpion is a cold-blooded animal representing a cold water sign. It's an arthropod that is an arachnid, which means it has 8 legs. And appropriately, Scorpio is the 8th sign. 8 legs, 8th sign. Saturn really freezes this sign and therefore hides these Scorpio qualities. The ruling planet of Scorpio is Mars, planet of aggression, intrusion, or controlling. And Saturn prevents this for those 4 months that it visits retrograde. All right, someone has a question here, an email. The question is, what if there's a couple and one is Sagittarius and one is Scorpio? And you can pretty much make some conjecture about that from what I've already said, but let's look at it. I could say that, first of all, it's not a good combination to begin with, simply because, of course, these two signs are 12 houses apart. It may be great at first, but look at the fundamental principle of 12 houses. The 12th house represents loss, endings, and symbolically now, death. And eventually that means the death or loss of partnership. It could mean that, or distance or separation of some kind, because the 12th house is faraway places. That's a distance. Maybe separation emotionally. For Sagittarians, when Saturn was in their 12th house, Saturn was hiding their fears of Scorpio. For Scorpio ascendants, Saturn was in their first house, hiding their true nature and causing division, because Saturn is a divider, and here it is in the first house of Scorpio and aspecting the 7th house of partner. Now that Saturn's in Sagittarius, it's no longer hiding that nature, no longer separating, and no longer controlling the fears that Sagittarius had about it. So Saturn is going back to Scorpio in June and will bring more division for Scorpio, again with that first house, seventh house thing with the aspect. Of course, these problems would be compounded if one of them in the couple had a dasha and bhukti that had a 12 configuration, where in their birth chart the bhukti ruler is 12 houses from their dasha ruler. Since Sagittarius people have this newfound freedom, they want to move to a higher level of life, to something that will give them enlightenment and fulfillment. They want a new life after this, especially just as the world is becoming more pure on its way to its own transformation in Satyug. I've actually written an ebook about what it will be like in this new golden age in Satyug, and you can find it at my website listed below the screen.